Hey, this is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Today's teaching is part 2 of going through the holiday season with family and friends, where we want to cover more points of concern that get brought up at this time of the year. One of those points of concern is, how do I raise my children in the midst of this season? Meaning, Mom, why don't we do this? Mom, why don't we do that? Mom, how come they're doing this and we're not? Those type of things. You know, I remember when we explained things to our children, we just simply, laid it out there. So, okay, guys, this is it. Now, mind you, for our children, we had a long time to prep it because when we came to Torah, it was right after the holiday season. And so therefore, we had a long year there to start prepping them for them, saying, hey, we're not going to be doing this next year. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. So they had a lot of time to prep for it. And not everyone gets that opportunity. Now, thankfully, when we presented it to our children, they really received it really good. In fact, they wanted nothing to do with Christmas after we discussed it, which, but not all children receive it in that kind of way. In fact, if your children are in public school, or even if they're not, you've just seen all the decorations around your neighborhood and stuff, the lights that people put on their houses and stuff, that can draw them saying, well, why can't we do this? And they can go on and on when they see this all around them on TV, everywhere. It's everywhere you go. And I really think that this is the time that should remind us how much we should be praying for our children. I mean, this is here's the thing. Our children are facing things every day, especially in public schools. But this is the time of year that really should show us in front of us what they face. And, the whole thing is we are to protect our children from the world. So this is the very thing we are to protect them from. And to give in to them would be failing that, okay? We're not protecting them from the things of the world. And yes, it's hard, it's difficult. But again, I think this should be a reminder to us how we should pray for them, not just this time of the year, but all the year, every day of the year, to pray for them because they are facing so many pressures, so many temptations that want to draw them away from the truth and into the world. So I think we need to make it a point of concern that we are always praying for our children like something crazy. And here's my concern that I've had. I know that, how do we portray to our children that, what we're doing is right, and by not celebrating Christmas, but at the same time not make our family and friends look bad because they are. The point is, just because someone celebrates this day, Christmas Day, it does not make them evil people, okay? And I think that has been the concern that I want my children to know. Just because they celebrate this, that does not make them bad or evil people. It just means they believe something different than we do on this point, okay? The fact here is there are incredibly awesome people who celebrate this day. I mean, okay, and let's not forget, many of us are not too far removed from this time when we celebrated it. And we know how we were when we celebrated it. We loved God, okay, yeah, at the time, God. And so knowing how we did, we need to realize that there are many others in that same circumstance. They just have not had their eyes opened to the truth yet. And I just know for us, it has been a major point of making sure we tackle this, that our children do not look down on anybody or judge or condemn someone because they celebrate it and because we don't. It's, for me, this just kind of reminds me of Jeremiah 16. Jeremiah 16 says, O Yahweh, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in the day of trouble, to you shall the nations come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited nothing but lies, worthless things in which there is no profit. It's in this that I believe we should be praying for people and encouraging our children to pray for people because their eyes have not been opened yet. We pray that their eyes are open one day and then that they'll say this long before what has been even prophesied for this. But the point is, I think we really need to make it a point that we do it ourselves. And I say this because you can tell your children to do something all you want. If you're not doing it, do you really think they're going to follow suit? Follow your what you're saying. They're going to follow your example. So if you want your children to not look down on others, to have a heart of compassion for others, then we need to do the same. So we need to make it a point that they see us living that example. Do not cut someone down. Do not judge them or condemn them because they are not following what we follow. And we need to be praying for them. I can say this for sure about my children, that, I personally had no problem telling my children the truth versus telling them lies about a man who doesn't exist. In our home, when we did celebrate Christmas, I struggled with that anyway, telling them about Santa. I thought, we're lying. That's not even right, So whenever we came to the truth, how much more I had no problem with that. The thing here is, though, we need to make it a point that our children, whenever we teach them the truth about all of this, that they do not look down or condemn others. They should have a love for our families, for our friends, to reach out and to pray for them and to not look down in any kind of judgmental way whatsoever. We need to make that very clear. And all I can say is for our family, that has been priority one when it comes to the Christmas season, and we do not judge others, bottom line. Because we know we did it, and we just need to pray that others will come to that same conclusion and they'll see the light the way we have. And that's our prayer. Not celebrating Christmas does not make one better. It just means that we are more accountable to what we know is truth. If someone takes the position that this makes them better, because they're not celebrating it and everyone else is, if that's your position, all I can say is be careful. Be very careful, because this is the very thing that Yeshua taught against. And he warned against regarding the Pharisees. Consider what he says here in Luke. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself. God, I thank you that I am not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Verse 14, I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. So be careful. You're not better. You're just more accountable. Now, what happens when, you're new to this? How do we respond to all the people asking how and why? And what do you mean you're not, celebrating Christmas? And what, you're not doing gifts? What? Wait a minute, you're not putting a tree up? What? All these things can come at you like a machine gun almost, and it can be overbearing. And sometimes it can be so much that, you can allow it to affect you. And here's the thing. When this happens, you need to slow down. No matter what is coming at you, basically put a wall around you, an invisible wall, if you will, and though they're all coming at you, okay, peace within, and let his peace rule. Because here's the thing, you cannot let their emotions, their passions, you can't let all this coming at you affect your emotions. And just by natural effect, that's what will happen. Because when things keep coming at you and keep coming at you, man, it can bog you down. And so you need to make it a point that you do not let anyone's emotions take root into you. and affect your emotions. You just can't let that happen. You've got to be solid in His peace, solid in His word, like a tree planted by the water. You're not going to move. You're rooted in His word, and just letting His peace rule in your heart at that moment in time. Because I'm telling you, if you haven't experienced it yet, you will, and it'll be feeling like everything is just coming against you, and you really need to focus on keeping His peace, being completely calm in the midst of the eye of the storm, if you will. Because some people, they just want to argue. And it's sad that sometimes they just won't let it go. And why, I don't know. In part one of our teaching of this, I mentioned how when we, our family would celebrate all the festivities, the gift giving, and all that stuff. When they were all done, that's when they called us, and that's when we would come over just to have dinner with them for all the family being together. Now, that alone lets them know where we stood and still stand on the situation. We don't have to say a word. Just that alone can put tension in the air, But we weren't going to just start saying things to them. Well, that would just be throwing salt on an open wound. Okay. Now, however, if someone, brings up a question or just has something to say to us and brings the topic up, well, then that opens the door and you can start discussing it with them. But we need to make it a point that even when that happens, do so in love and pray for wisdom that the Father will give you the right words, how to say it, when to say it. And I think that is the big issue that we need to remember. Don't just go out blabbing, okay? Let them come to you, because especially if they know. Now, if they don't know, then there's obviously a point in time when you need to say something. But even then, pray for wisdom for the right time on that. Just be cautious not to push it on them. Like I said, you plant the seed, okay? Just don't plant it, water it, and try to force it to grow all in the same day, okay? It's not like you can put Miracle-Gro on it, okay? It takes time. Let the Father do what He needs to do, and it'll happen in time. I'm thinking of the verse in Corinthians where it says, Paul is saying, I planted it, and Apollos, he watered it. Well, then, but God made it grow, okay? The point here is there will be times, okay, when, yes, someone will get it just like that, and it will feel like Miracle-Gro was put on it, okay? But that doesn't happen for everybody, so we remember that we plant. The Father will take it from there. He will make it grow in the right time. In these conversations that we have, there will be many, okay, who just don't have an openness to discuss. The conversation will tarry, and the next thing you know, they're not open at all. They start bickering with you and start trying to fight with you. And if that's the case, just stop. Just stop. And it's only going to lead into a heated debate that will get you nowhere. If someone is really, truly wanting to know and wanting to say, well, why do you believe this? And why that? Well, then cool. Share it. But if they're just trying to prove you wrong, I guess it's good to want to have that conversation, but in it, don't try to force them to accept that you're right. Always be open, always be willing to discuss. But if it starts getting heated, just drop it, because obviously either side is not going to budge, okay? And that's something I think both sides of any discussion, debate needs to remember, that you're not going to change either side in just one conversation. It just isn't going to happen. And so both sides needs to realize that. And if one side's not going to realize that, the other side has to man up and say, okay, let's just bow out of this. And normally that's going to have to be us, because a lot of times people will not change, okay? It's just, we need to keep it in prayer. I think more than anything, that's something we simply need to pray about. We have lost connection with family members over things like this before. And actually, it was over Halloween, of all things, to lose relationships with your family over Halloween. But it happened. And it's sad. And it's in that, you see that division can come no matter what you do to prevent it. Division can come. And it's sad. I think, to me, it's more sad that they're willing to hold on to traditions than to hold on to family, and they're willing to let family go and push family aside in order to hold on to that tradition. I think that's what catches me off guard more than than anything. And I see it in multiple people's lives who call us and email us, and I don't get it. But it happens. And when it does happen, it hurts and it's hard. Especially when you know, and it seems to us, obviously, that many of these practices that they're following, especially when it comes to Halloween, but even in Christmas and other things, that a lot of these practices and traditions are truly rooted in things that are not of God, okay? And so why would you want to hold on to that over a relationship with your family and close friends? I don't know, but it does. It happens. And not only that, it's hard. And so what do you do? Well, sometimes there's nothing you can do. There's not. And you just bow out and let it be. And I think what I have seen a lot of times and here is that people actually get aggressive. They actually take issue with you, and they start getting mean, start speaking evil and mean of you. And maybe not just that, maybe even do things evil. It's happened with many before. And in that, man, that can be so tough and hard to accept. It's hard not to let that pull you down. But let me tell you something. It should actually encourage you. You're saying, what? Wait a minute, Steve. How do you, no. Let it encourage you. Anytime you suffer any kind of recourse for standing up for the truth, I think it's awesome. In fact, you're blessed. The scripture tells us that if we suffer for standing up for what is right, we're blessed. Now, if you're suffering for doing what's wrong, well, then that's to be natural. But if you're standing up for doing what's right, you're going to be blessed. Yeshua said it himself. He said, "Blessed are you when men hate you, when they exclude you and insult you and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man." So when they make fun of you and when they don't let you play in all the reindeer games, if you will, you're good. You're good. In fact, look at verse 23. It says, "Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven, for that is how their fathers treated the prophets." So rejoice in that. Rejoice. We can't be focused on what man is thinking of us. I know it's hard to not do that because, it's in all of us to want to be liked. It's in all of us to want to be loved. It's in all of us to want to be well thought of. It's just in all of us to really want that. And you can say, well, I don't care. Well, you know that there's certain people who you want to like you. You want to be well thought of to a certain degree. That's in all of us, I think, anyway. And so whenever that doesn't happen, that can really just pull you down. But remember, if you're standing for truth and they're rejecting you because of that, you're blessed. And we should be more mindful of what the Father thinks about us, knows about us, than what people think of us. That should be our priority. Don't ever let that fall away from our mindset, that we should be more concerned with what the Father knows than what people think about us. Now, in part 1, we discussed a lot about the men, husbands. And I don't want to leave the women out completely because I know from many emails we have received, it's difficult being a wife of an unbeliever. You're wanting to follow the ways of Yah, yet your family is not, and your husband is not, who is the head of the household. And it's hard to come under that. And in fact, there's something in you a lot of times that says, you want to fall away from that, but there's a covenant there you have. And so in that, we look at what does Peter say? Because Peter gives encouraging words to women who are married to unbelievers. Okay, let's look at what Peter says. "Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives." So don't try to force something on them. Express your wishes, but the final decision, it's really in your husband's hands, okay? He makes that final decision. Fighting, nagging, complaining, even threatening of any kind, that's only going to push them farther away from the Father. And that's just not what we want. It's not what you want. You want them to be drawn to the Father. Again, listen to what Peter says. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. So pray for wisdom and do your best in following Peter's thoughts, in reaching your family. It may make a much bigger impact than you can imagine. As far as reaching out to people in general, I've seen a lot of people try to quote from 2 Timothy, and it concerns me because they try to quote, all Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. And then they'll say, see, we're supposed to rebuke and correct people in this right here. It says it right here. The problem with this is that you're not playing on the same ball field with them. Or at least if you're playing on the same ball field, their out of bounds is different from your out of bounds, okay? Because they're going to look at scriptures differently than you. You can say, well, this says this and this says this. And they're going to say, well, I'm sorry, but I don't interpret that the same way. You follow this Torah stuff, I don't. So immediately, what's that do? Well, it lets us know that this only works when those you are addressing are pursuing the same interpretation of the scriptures as you are. So if they're not, well, that takes us right back to square one. That verse is irrelevant because it's not going to apply for them. And it takes us right back to the beginning. And here's the thing. I believe we are accountable to reaching people on their level. To reach out to them to where they will understand and do our best to where they will receive. Just spewing out facts and spewing forth the truth at people, that's not going to be effective for most people. Yes, for some people, that's what they need to hear. Just give them the facts, if you will. But a lot of people, well, it doesn't work. So we need to do our best to reach out to them on their level. I think of Peter. No, it was Paul. in Acts, when he's in Athens, and he's seeing all this, these gods, these people worship these gods and stuff, and he's looking around, and you can I can just imagine him trying to say, okay, how am I going to reach these people? And suddenly he latches on to them, to something they have, and says, let me tell you about this God, and he reaches them on their level. So in reaching out to people, I think we really do need to reach them on their level. Matter of fact, Paul even says, I become all things to all men. What's he mean by that? He says, that's to be reaching them on their level. If they're this, I want to reach them on that. If they're that, I want to reach them over here on that. He wants to reach them at their level. I believe we need to make it a point that we do the same for those who we are trying to reach out to. Even giving questions to people, I think that is really can be helpful, because if you give them questions, they may not receive them in the conversation, but when you leave, they may start saying, well, gee, I never thought of that. What if this? Or what about that? And then the next thing you know, well, now they're on a quest and trying to pursue these answers to these questions. And isn't that what we want? For them to pursue the truth, to question. I think that is something that we really need to focus, is to reach out to people on their levels. And that is what we want. That is to get them thinking and questioning. In all of this, in reaching people, I think it's the Christmas season, whenever it is the hardest for people who are adults who have adult children, the older adults. When they see their adult child, if you will, stop celebrating Christmas, I think it's hardest on them, because immediately they feel robbed of all the memories of bringing you up, in this tradition. And now all of a sudden they don't have the joy of sharing that tradition with you again, because they see in their mind's eye, you're over here now. And I think it's hardest on them. And in that, we need to show them respect and reach out to them in love. Now, that being said, I've heard many of examples from people saying, Steve, I've done that, and in fact, they don't show me respect at all. Matter of fact, they show hate back. And I know that I've heard many people say this, that here we have adults here reaching out to their adult, parent, and they're not receiving. And they don't want to talk to you until you submit to what they want, and that's hard. But just do your best to reach out to them, to always keep that love open to them. And it's difficult, I know. And yeah, it's real difficult. Just make it a point. They see Yeshua in you, reaching out. Sometimes that can be harder on them because they want you to be mean. They want you to, so that'll justify their feelings. And then when they don't get that justification, that makes them all the more madder sometimes, or more mad. And so yeah, again, it's difficult, but it needs to be done that we show them the respect. Just make it a point that they know that there's lines that we won't cross. And in that, eventually, Lord willing, there will be a respect factor come back. If it doesn't, remember, there's only so much we can do. Just make it a point that we always keep those lines of communication open for them. I want to close with saying that I think we really need to, and when it comes to witnessing, if you will, in this topic at Christmas season, that I think we would be so far more effective if we stop cursing the darkness and just shine the light. Now, you're saying, Steve, what do you mean? I mean this. Pointing at Christmas and saying it's wrong here and it's wrong there, it's wrong there. Well, that's cursing the darkness, if you will. Whereas if we just share the light and all the joys and excitement and the peace and just the fulfillment of what the feast days, Yahweh's Moedim, represent, and how they all point to Yeshua, and how there's a joy in following his ways and just showing the light, in that will draw them to the light. And in shining that light, you're exposing the darkness, okay? So I guess what I'm saying is, don't curse the darkness, expose the darkness, and by just simply shining the light of Yahweh, and let that love for him be made manifest in your life, in your speech. Everything we think and we do, let it be seen by all of what we are experiencing, what we're getting to do, because Yahweh has opened up his truth to us and letting us see what it is and what it represents. I just feel there's so much more in that, and letting the people see that. I think it can be so much far more effective and instrumental in reaching out to people and letting them see that joy in us by what we are getting to do in celebrating his days. Now, yes, okay, there's going to be some who'll say, well, you're in a cult. Well, you're just being a Judaizer. Okay, yeah, agreed. There's been many say that, and they will continue to say that. Just remember that they're lashing out in misunderstanding. Okay, we can't take it personal. We just can't. Don't take it personal. It's because they don't understand. And that's, again, where we just simply fall back and letting them see the joy. Not the to-dos, but letting them see it's a joy in walking in his ways. It's a joy in letting them see, let them see the joy in walking and seeing the hidden treasures in the Moedim and so much more in the scriptures. In all of that, if they still persist, just do your best to agree to disagree and keep your focus on him. In that, if you just keep your focus on him, they're going to see it. They will. They will see it beyond reason. And I think more than anything, that's what we should be doing. Letting them see him in us. Not the type attitude, but the love that we have for him and walking in his ways. And then let them ask the questions to us. And Lord willing, that will happen. And again, remember, that will only push some away, accusing you of things. That's okay. You're blessed. Remember? Okay? Let them see him. Let them see him in you, in your attitudes, in your motives, in your actions, in everything about us. Let Yeshua just exude from our very existence onto them. Let them see, let us just glow with his presence, so they cannot deny that we are closer to him because we're following in his ways. I think it's just so cool. I'm sorry. But I pray that that is your prayer, that you just let him just be all over you so much that they can't deny it. They can't deny it. Let that be your prayer. No matter how they treat you, what they say about you, what they do behind your back, that's irrelevant. Let them see you, magnifying him in your life. Let them see you exemplifying him in everything, because he walked it. We're doing our best to walk it. Yeah, I get excited thinking about it. Let them see him in you. Well, that's all I have. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, shalom.